Welcome back. We've been off for the summer, but it is time for our No Reading Required book club, Tongue Pierced, How the Words You Speak Transform the Life You Live. Wow, reading this backwards is really challenging. We are doing this as a No Reading Required book club. So what that means is I'm going to read each chapter each week. Before our video, I have highlighted some things that stood out of the importance of that chapter. And then we have this group discussion. We actually are hanging out at the church. So we have some people here joining me. Alex is over here. Some other ladies from the church are here. They're going to say hi. Hi. So we want to invite you to this group discussion. And I know it's going to take some time for some of you to come online. Maybe you forgot and you're watching this later in the week, and that's okay too. If you leave your comments, I will be checking them throughout the week. So this chapter today we're starting is chapter 1. Right off, it is all about the power of words. Yeah, there it is. The power of words. This goes parallel to the sermon. If you were here part of our Sunday worship, we were talking about how our words matter. And there is definitely some parallels, some insight I got from this chapter in that sermon. And yet I tried to keep the sermon its own information so that if you were coming here tonight, you still got some new stuff. So the verses that start this off is a psalm from, nope, it's not a psalm. It was written by King Solomon, David's son. And it's a proverb found in Proverbs 18:21. This translation is the New King James. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. And this kind of like matches that our words have meaning, our words have value, and they can determine the course of our life. This next one is a quote by Stephen R. Covey? I would have gone Covey.
Stephen R. Covey.
I will trust you. Words have inherent power, a force capable of lighting one's path and horizons. Used correctly and positively, words are the first building blocks for success and inner peace. Used incorrectly and negatively, they are capable of undermining even the best of intentions. Well, I like the first part of that. The use correctly and positively, good outcomes. When anybody ever ends with the used incorrectly, damnation, makes me just feel kind of like, oh, great. I could mess everything up. And I don't think that is the message of this book. I don't know how you feel about that. It is pretty strong language. So our author, which is Nelson Searcy. This is a totally side note. Because of some learning disabilities that I have, hi Mom, so glad you're joining us. I find I have two vocabularies. I have a written vocabulary and I have an auditory, spoken vocabulary. I know words when I hear them and I can use them in conversation, but they don't always match my reading comprehension on the page, or I sometimes use words that I don't realize match words. Okay, that might be really hard to explain, which means I don't really know how to sound words out, and coming across new words is really challenging for me, which is why I have a wonderful husband that just reads the words I don't know out for me.
Side note, Stephen R. Covey, the reason why I know him is because he's actually a famous author. He's the guy who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, well, I just learned something new. I have not read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So Nielsen, who I should... That's probably why I haven't read it. Starts off with a study that was done by some sociologists. And they were trying to discover what are the most powerful words in the English language. So they looked for, instead of looking at individual words, they looked at groups of words. So they determined what was the most powerful one-word sentence the most powerful 2-word sentence, the most powerful 3-word sentence, and the most powerful 4-word sentence. And I'm about to tell you the 4-word sentence, but while I'm saying this, what do you think? Think about it. I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to see if you who are watching online can put it in the what was the most powerful 3 and 2 sentence or 1-word sentence words, singular words? So the most important or most powerful, most piercing to our lives, most impact on us, 4 words in a group, not necessarily a sentence. I said sentence, but it doesn't have to be a sentence, was once upon a time. And the author goes on to talk about how I love you too, Mom. And you're actually telling me what the most powerful 3 letters word is. 3-word sentence. And you are correct. It is I love you. Good job. I love you too, Mom. Okay. Once upon a time, countless stories throughout human history have begun with these 4 words. They have introduced tales of joy, tragedy, victory, defeat, love, and sacrifice to us for centuries. As children, hearing these 4 words let us know that something significant, something fantastic was about to follow. We listen, and the once upon a time stories we heard shaped our worlds. Every story we encounter begins with them, whether spoken or implied, including your own story. So we think about that. We are all in our stories, the stories that God is mapping out with us and journeying with us through. And once upon a time impacts them. The next ones, Mom was right. So that was the 4. Mom got the 3. Any idea what the 2-word sentence is? I think this one kind of cheated a little bit. There's an apostrophe in there for the first word.
Yeah.
That was my clue. I'm not going. No, that's not it. Good guess. Any idea from ladies over there? You don't have to, if you don't have. Oh, Mom got it. I'm sorry. Second most powerful, second.
2-word.
The most powerful 2-word phrase. And the single most powerful word in our collective English vocabulary is
Forgive me.
I.
Oh.
I. So I'm sorry, I love you, once upon a time.
That makes a really cute sentence.
Our words have the potential to open doors of opportunity for us or to close them and seal them shut. They can nourish and build up our relationships or tear down the people we love. The words we speak to ourselves, our self-talk, if you will, have the power to shape our subconscious view of our worth, our abilities, therefore determining the actions we take or don't take on a daily basis. And the words we say to and the words we hear from God are critical. Sorry, let me read that again because the emphasis changes the meaning. And the words we say to and hear from God are critical to the story we live in, both on this earth and when our time is over. And if we think even about Scripture, how Scripture begins with in the beginning and how God created. Then God said, let there be light. He spoke our world into existence with words, powerful words. God's words have been tools that carry the power of creation into reality. And he has passed those tools onto us. This is probably the most significant idea in this chapter to me. You and I are never more like God than when we use our words to speak truth of his will into our lives, for our lives into existence. Let me try that one again. So, thinking about how God used words for creation, and we are created in his image. He has passed those tools on to us. filled just as surely with the power to create and shape lives. In fact, you and I are never more like God than when we use our words to speak the truth of his will for our lives into existence. I find that very, more than just profound, more than just deep, but like it takes my breath away, awe-inspiring. Like the idea that I can see God creating, and I know he has put creation into me. That's why I want to knit. That's why I want to paint. That's why I want to write sometimes. It's why some ladies and men like gardening. It's why I think a game like Minecraft is so captivating for young people, where it's Lego in a virtual world that you can just build whatever you want. God has put creation in us. And here he's adding this element I had never considered before this book, that God has passed his tools of creation, the words we speak. And when we speak like Jesus to ourselves and to others, we are like God in the sense of we are living up to what the potential he made for us. Does that ring true with anybody else?
Yeah.
I'm looking around the room. I got some nods. Oh, how easy it is to forget the inherent power of our words. We gloss over their significance because they are commonplace to us. We take them for granted. So yeah, right after this like hard-hitting, we are like God in the way he's gifted us with words, it comes down to this: we forget how important words can be. They're so commonplace. We use them all the time. Stepping back and seeing the weight and impact of our ingrained linguistic choices. That's a really fancy way of saying when you were a child, you picked up the language your parents had. You picked up the language of your caregivers, your teachers, your older siblings, and it just became second nature to you. How many times have you done something and you're like, I sound just like my mom, or I sound just like my dad? I said it on Sunday. Like the silly one is like, whenever I wanted something and my dad didn't want to give me a reason, he used to say, because I'm mean, cruel, and nasty. And there are times where somebody's like, why can't I do that? And my response is, because it's ingrained in me from childhood, because I'm mean, cruel, and nasty. To which I always told my dad, but no, you're not. And whoever I'm telling is like, but no, you're not. It's just this pattern or cycle because we come by it naturally. It's ingrained in us. But when we are able to do just that, when we begin to see that each of our little careless throwaway words actually carries the power of life and death, we change how we speak. Life and death issues are nothing to be taken lightly until we start to realize that our word choices carry enormous consequences. We will continue to underestimate how the words we say work for us or against us. And then this one was really important. I even like put it, you can't see. It's really there, right? Nope. I got it in a box. I highlighted it and put it in a box. What you say today will, and he then emphasizes not can, but will do one of two things: either lead you down a path towards more purposeful, abundant life, or move you towards destruction. Not physical destruction necessarily. The words can definitely be a catalyst for health issues, but destruction of relationship, careers, momentum, joy, peace, hope, and contentment. And I read this essay on Sunday, and I think it's worth hearing again. So if you heard it on Sunday, forgive me. This is from War of Words by Paul David Tripp, and I'm going to add both paragraphs. I only read the second paragraph on Sunday. We think that the words are not important because we think of words as little Unitarian tools for making our lives easier and more efficient than they were, when they are actually a powerful gift given by a communicating God for his divine purpose. You have never spoken a neutral word in your life. Your words have direction to them. If your words are moving in the life direction, they will be words of encouragement, hope, love, peace, unity, instruction, wisdom, and correction. But if your words are moving in a death direction, they will be words of anger, malice, slander, jealousy, gossip, division, contempt, racism, violence, judgment, and condemnation. That's just something to take in for a moment. This is where I made a comment of, but now we know, and knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe. I like that some people appreciated my humor on Sunday. He continues, though, if knowledge really is power, then intentional awareness is the live wire. We now recognize what our words can do. We are aware because we have heard it, and therefore we can be intentional about taking these things, these patterns. We are aware of what they can do, so we can start making choices to change our words or make the effort to use new words. So he goes on to say, and I'm just going to read this paragraph, even though I only highlighted 2 parts, it's in context and you kind of need the whole thing. Those innate patterns reflect our early experiences with words. They are the results of conditioning that began before we even knew how to speak. Before you could say mama or dada, you began to internalize the meanings and tonality of the conversation taking place around you. When you started finding your voice, you learned to talk by repeating what you heard your parents and other family members say. The words of your closest relatives literally became our words until we developed words of our own. Even when we began to craft our own language in the ways we want, those initial subconscious linguistic roots hold strong. Without awareness or intentionality, we are destined to repeat the patterns we grew up with, which will either be a blessing or a curse. Did you like the way your parents spoke to you when you were a child? Did you like the way your parents spoke to each other when you were a child? If not, hopefully, you have been intentional about making changes in your own words choices when addressing your children or children you come in contact with. The way you speak to them now is likely the way they will speak to their own children. So when we make choices to change our words, we're not just affecting our lives, but future generations. Think of the way your father spoke to your mother, or vice versa, while you were growing up. Do you feel that the way they communicated with each other was a blessing or a curse? Do you like where the relationship went? If not, to be mindful of using those same words when it comes to how you talk to your spouse will lead to, so if you speak the same way to your spouse, will lead to the same results. The creative force of words cannot be underestimated. How are we doing? Good? It's a lot. So here are the closing 3 truths of the chapter. Words, this is the first one, are a gift from God. So he has given us the gift of communication. He has given us the gift of words. The ability to use words at all is a gift that has been given to us by our Creator. With this gift comes responsibility. Feels like Spider-Man now. With great gifts comes great responsibility. I do not apologize for the nerd that I am. Jesus' disciple Luke wrote in his gospel, when someone had been given much, much will be required in return. And when someone has been entrusted with much, even much more will be required. So that idea that we have been gifted words. The second one, and we heard this in the sermon on Sunday, words can build up or tear down. And he gives an example just of a story where he was on a plane and somebody came on, it's like, you're in my seat. And he looks down and he's looking at his boarding pass. He's like, no, this is my seat. And the guy just berated him, called him names, began swearing at the stewardess. And the stewardess eventually like, can I see your boarding pass? You're on the wrong flight. Yes, this is yours. And then he just insulted everyone like, this is all your fault. And he stormed off. And that one person's language changed the whole atmosphere of everyone on the plane in that drag down sort of way. Whereas I've been in lines. Well, actually, we're going to use a story from like this past week. We were in Nova Scotia, and we were in line, and you went to the washroom. I got food, and we sat down at this like table, and the lady next to us just leaned over and asked Alex a question.
Yeah.
And it was really bright and cheerful and positive, and she was waiting. Alex sat down before I did, and so she was trying to figure out if her blind date had shown up. And anyway, we just all started chatting, and it was really positive, and I left the cafe bright and hopeful and full of like, there are good people in the world, and I want to make friends, and I'm looking forward to being able to socialize and meet people again. Just a very different atmosphere.
And it was a very simple start of the conversation. She just leaned over and asked, had I voted yet?
Yeah.
Because it was voting day, and she was still unsure of which party she wanted to vote for, and she just leaned over and asked if I had voted yet. And we got into the conversation about what the policies were and where she, and
it was just a very nice, like it made the whole space cheerful. She was just a bubbly person. It made me happy. Made me sad that we didn't live there, because I'm like, I could be friends with you.
And I'm still kind of curious how her date went.
Oh yeah, because so at one point he came in and they got up and hugged, and then he's like, I'm gonna go get a drink. And I'm like, is this a first date? And she's like, yeah, and I'm nervous. I'm like, good luck. And it was yeah. So I'm thinking like we have had encounters with people where we're having a bad day, and that right person says to us, well, I hope you have a blessed day, and your day improved from that moment on. And it might not be those words, but something just triggered, like it changed everything. And we've had those encounters where the grumpy is like, well, nothing good's gonna come about today. And like you find the rest of your day, you're kind of like, yeah, okay. Like, okay. So those are small examples, but words can build up or words can tear down. And Alex and I were driving today on our way here, and I had done something that to me was very insignificant, but you were brave and said, when you do this, it hurts me. I feel like you're telling me what I'm trying to tell you isn't important. And I'm like, I'm using the second, I'm sorry, Alex. I did not intend to hurt you. I will be more careful in the future. And I feel like a bad wife right now. He's like, you're not a bad wife. And we're going to live a life of this thing, that thing. And the fact that we were able to just talk about it left the conversation, instead of you being upset at me and me wondering why you're disgruntled, we were in a better place for using words to encourage each other.
And just recognizing that strife will happen in a relationship, but if you're willing to open up and talk about it and work through it and be open-minded enough to accept it and apologize and work to be better, you can get past it, and the relationship can still be bright and cheery and wonderful.
You make me happy. I know, newlyweds.
It's a lifetime chore.
Well, and it is a lifetime chore, because not if we messed it up or now, but if we didn't make those choices, there was a study done a long time ago by like some counselors, and they did research on relationships that succeeded and relationships that failed. And the thing they thought was, well, maybe the successful ones just didn't have problems. And the reality was both groups had strain and stress. They all had at some point medical crisis or a financial crisis or like a miscommunication. And the difference between the successful ones and the failures would turn their backs on each other and stop speaking. And when they did speak, they'd nitpick and criticize and use words that pushed the other person away. And if you're continually making a rift, how can you journey together? And the language of the couples that were successful is they were continually turning to each other. So even in the rough times, they would share a joke or a blessing, and their language brought them together. So that's another example of your words and your life choices can either bring life or destruction. Okay, and point 3 from this chapter is 3. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your words. And this isn't, we were just, so this trip down to Nova Scotia that we took, my loving husband totally was okay with me listening to Anne of Green Gables on the drive down, which is not his normal reading cup of tea. He's much more of a sci-fi adventure story. But Anne of Green Gables says something, like Anne Shirley says something when she's much younger. She's like, people always laugh at me when I say big words. But when you have so many big ideas, you need big words to get them out. Which I think is the most adorable quote. And yet, when she's much older, like I think she's about 15, and Marilla's like, I've noticed you're not using as many big words. And she's like, well, and you've changed so much. Like there was a conversation about you've changed, you don't speak up as much, you're not using the grand words quite as much. And Anne kind of comes to a place, she's like, I used to say them, but now I found ways to communicate with less, is kind of what she's saying. And I'm still me, but I don't need as many big words. So this statement, the quality of your words, isn't necessarily using that university $5, $10 big word, but the type of words you're using. So this is what he says. The way you choose to communicate will ultimately affect every area of your life. Words aren't neutral. Every word that goes out has consequence attached to it. How you speak to your friends, family members, coworkers will determine the quality of those relationships. The same is true in your spiritual life. How well you communicate with God through prayer will determine the quality of your connection to him. And I had problems with that statement at first, the God one, not the first one, but just no, God always listens. But if you're only coming to God, like, God, are you there? I don't, like, that will hinder and change how you view God. If you're like, coming with Thanksgiving changes your relationship because you're remembering the blessings.
If the only time you pray is when you're hoping to win the lottery, you're not going to have a great relationship.
Yeah, or if you're like, I know people who are angry at God, so the only time they talk to God is when they're yelling at him for making their life miserable. Your internal dialogue, the words you say to yourself, will determine the quality of your actions and interactions all day. It goes back to that statement of, I really struggle now whenever I make a mistake, even a minute one, I say I'm dumb or I'm an idiot or I'm a failure. It goes back to ingrained patterns from a long time ago, and it affects, well, now I don't want to try again. And I'm working on that. Somebody often confronts me if I say those words out loud. But yes, this is my journey too. So yes.
Yeah, I'm usually the one who confronts you. If I'm around and hear it.
When you consider all these things together, it naturally follows that the quality of your life is determined by the words you speak. Being able to express yourself effectively is crucial to living a life you imagined. And I find this next part fascinating. It's another study. I'm going to read it in his words, but I find this fascinating. I tried to put it in my sermon and just couldn't figure out how to put it in. I recently came across a study conducted by a linguistics researchers on the large cross-section of violent prisoners. So this is a study done in American prisons looking at the most violent of inmates. The researchers met with the prisoners and studied the range and type of vocabulary they used. They determined that these prisoners had about 1/5 of the vocabulary of the average person in America, noting that one of the major contributing factors to the violent histories of these men was that they had no other way to express themselves. What a clear example of how ability to use words, or in this case, the inability to use words, determine the quality of their life. Words are powerful. That's the heart of this book. We've already talked about the most powerful three-word set phrase is "I love you." The most powerful two-word phrase is "I'm sorry," and the most powerful single word is "I." Once you and I are aware of the inherent power words carry, we have to do something with that knowledge. As the old adage goes, to know and not to do is really to not know. So what can we do? It begins with being intentional. We have to be intentional about the harnessing of what comes out of our mouth, not only for our benefit, but for the benefit of others. And this is where he gets into, me and one of the ladies here were having a conversation about this book earlier, and we find the name troubling. Because if you Google tongue pierced, you're going to get a lot of tattoo parlor ads talking about piercing your tongue. And he doesn't actually do a good job, in my opinion, of explaining why he chose this phrase. He tells us what he intends by it, but not why this phrase. So this is what he says. Throughout these pages, we will be discussing what it looks like to live a tongue-pierced lifestyle. Okay, so it's a lifestyle that we are embracing with this. That is a lifestyle that acknowledges the importance of saying your words, using your words to love God and love others, which I think is so appropriate. One of the reasons we're doing this book is our church motto is to live and love like Jesus with Jesus. And one of the ways we love others is with the words we say. So this, I think, the lifestyle of acknowledging the importance of using our words to love God and love others is perfect. I still don't think he does a great job explaining why it's tongue pierced. The words that, what do we say that word is?
Exemplify.
Exemplify. I didn't know exemplify was spelled that way. I don't know how else I would have spelt it, but this goes back to that thing about I have two vocabularies. That exemplify a tongue-pierced lifestyle are words that reflect the heart filled with love, words that will impact your reality in ways that will bring you meaning, relationships, and success you want. When you begin to live a tongue-pierced lifestyle, you will finally be able to move towards the life you were created for. And I think many of us are already on this journey, have been on this journey for a while. And this is just a new piece to what God is already doing in our lives. God has already been transforming our hearts. We've been making space for that. What would it look like if you committed to choosing a tongue-pierced lifestyle? What are you beginning to focus on? What if you begin focusing on using only words that build up others? What would it look like if everyone in your family decided to do the same? Everyone in your church, everyone in your community. What if the people in your social circles were intentionally choosing words that promoted life instead of allowing negative, complaining, gossip, and other deadly words to slip in? The result would be nothing short of revolutionary. You and I and us together can be a catalyst. As you dive into the pages ahead, I invite you, I challenge you, even to commit to transforming your life by changing the words you speak. And that is our first chapter. So here we go, tongue pierced, still not satisfied with the title, but I like the premise. Normally I would have a question or two, but it's really just an introduction for this first night. It's established what we already kind of realized. Words are important, which I think many of us knew. God has given us the gift of words. With those words, we can tear up or build down. And the type of words we say, the quality of our words affect the quality of our life. So that's the premise of this book. He set it up. I know over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about, so here are the chapter titles, what your words say about you, the most important conversation you'll ever have, go ahead, talk to yourself. That one is specifically looking at the words you say. So that confession I said about how I struggle with how I tell myself my value in things, that's chapter is going to be that. The language of love, developing an attitude of gratitude, the art of cursing, mastering confrontation and conflict, and words that last. So those are our upcoming chapters. Will be in this book probably for 9 weeks, but every once in a while we'll get into a chapter that might need, like that self-talk one, we might divide it in half once we read it. So I'll let you know. But yeah, we'll be doing this for most of the fall, and I'm really excited for the adventure. I'm glad that you are joining me. I'm glad that you are here in person as well, and that more of us can have this conversation together. Probably should pray.
Mhm.
Let's talk to Jesus as we go out. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the men and women who have gathered to talk about words and the importance of words. Thank you for our tech people in our lives who have set up that this can stream in multiple places so more people can have access and see it. And we thank you for the words you've given us. May the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart be pleasing to you. And we need you to help us with that. Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Okay, we will see you. Well, some of you will see on Sunday. But for everyone else, we will see you back here next Tuesday. Bye, friends.
Bye.